Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. For a free financial survival toolkit and newsletter, sign up at KerryLutz.com, KerryLutz.com.
1490 WGCH. I'm here at the Global Economic Summit with Peter Schiff. This is Kerry Lutz, Financial Survival Network. Peter, welcome, and what do you think of Freedom Fest in the Bahamas?
Well, we always like coming to the Bahamas. My kid likes it, so I brought him along. But it's always a good crowd here, and it's a good international crowd too.
You were talking about the dollar losing its primacy, its hegemony. This isn't going to be a pretty process, is it?
For most people, no. People in America in particular are used to the dollar being supreme. That's how we're able to live the lifestyle that we do live. And even though our standard of living is not as great as it once was, it's still a lot higher than it's going to be because we're able to live beyond our means thanks to the dollar. But we've abused the privilege of being the issue of the world's reserve currency. I think a dollar crisis, a U.S. sovereign debt crisis is close at hand, and I think the dollar is going to fall sharply, and with it will be the American standard of living. And it's going to be a very, very difficult adjustment for people to make when things are a lot more expensive and the living standards are a lot lower. Hopefully this will force some responsibility on the federal government, because without dramatically shrinking the government, we're never going to reclaim the type of living standard that we lost.
Right. So do you see more Detroits and more Las Vegases in our future?
In what way? You mean bad real estate markets?
In terms of failed cities, Detroit, is literally disintegrating as we watch. It's kind of falling into a state of anarchy. Is this the future for these cities that were already in decline?
Well, I think it's the future of the nation if we're going to continue to mire it in regulation and taxes and government intervention of one form or another, where they have subsidies here or tax breaks there. I think as long as we try to micromanage the economy from Washington, it's not going to function. And it's going to continue to decay. We've been able to bridge the gap between the lack of production with imports. But again, our ability to import is dependent on our ability to export dollars. But if the world doesn't want them because they realize that they're just going to keep depreciating, then we can only consume to the extent that we can produce. And we're not as productive as we used to be because government is in the way, and government continues to get in the way. So we have to turn that, turn the tide and get back to less government, fewer regulations, lower taxes, sound money. But right now, we're not even headed in that direction.
Right. So basically, we have to go 180, and there has to be a political will to do this, which is totally lacking now. Do you think that a collapse, a major depreciation of the dollar is going to create that political will?
Well, I think so. I mean, that's, that's the basis of my investment philosophy, or that eventually, after we have a collapse, that we will have maybe now some incentive for the politicians to do the right thing. I mean, right now there is no incentive. If they can postpone it, they will. But once the crisis occurs, then all right, well, now you might as well, do the right thing. But even then, that presupposes that they know what the right thing is, because there's a lot of them that don't. That's why I think, we have to have the right people in office, not because it's going to prevent the crisis. It's not. But because it'll prevent it from getting much worse if we can do the right thing. Because so far, every time we've had a crisis, we've just made it worse with stimulus. But I think we're running out of the ability to do that. The stimulus becomes less and less effective as it makes the problem bigger. It's kind of like you build up a tolerance to a drug, and at some point, it doesn't matter. It's not going to do anything to you because your body is so used to it. And so we've got so much stimulus now that I think it's just, we're in the overdose stage.
Right. So basically, we're kind of doomed. I wouldn't say doomed, but our fate is cast. And then once we can't borrow anymore, then we have to go back to how is wealth really created and pulling stuff out of the ground, making stuff. And the good thing is nobody's going to loan us money, so we're going to be on our own, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a good thing when we can't borrow anymore, especially the U.S. government, because the U.S. government just borrows and then uses the borrowed money to weaken the economy. And, a lot of borrowing just finances consumption. But, yeah, we're going to be at that point where we're going to have to, make some serious changes. The danger is that we move in the wrong direction. See, the danger is that we take this collapse and we use it as a repudiation of capitalism to say, oh, you see, look at this disaster. We didn't have enough regulation. We had too many greedy businessmen, and we have to completely control the economy and put the whole thing in the hands of government. Government needs to take care of everybody. The government needs to make sure everybody has a job. The government has to decide what's produced and who produces it, and the government needs to, if we go in that direction, then we're finished. I mean, we're never going to, we'll be like the Soviet Union. We'll stagnate for generations. But if we do the right thing, if we throw out the government and re-embrace capitalism and say, hey, the reason that it's such a mess is because the government was too involved, that this proves that government intervention doesn't work and government planning doesn't work, and we need to go back to the free market capitalism of the 19th century. If we do that and have sound money and small government, then we have a bright future. And if we do the opposite, it's very bleak. Although at some point in time, we might do the right thing. We might not be alive to see it. Our grandchildren might have a revolution to overthrow the U.S. government and get back to freedom. But I'm hoping that it doesn't take that long.
Right. So what's interesting is I would say that you're now probably the most visible and perhaps leading proponent of the Austrian School of Economics, of free markets, around, with maybe perhaps the exception of Ron Paul, because he's running.
I was about to say that I would have to say that Ron Paul is the most visible proponent of Austrian economics. I mean, a lot of people now see him. He's, taking part in the presidential debates. I mean, he's got to be getting close to a household name now in the U.S., given how many debates we've had, at least among Republican households. And he's getting very, very popular on college campuses with a lot of young people. So he is doing a lot to spread the message of Austrian economics, although I think I do a better job of communicating it than he does. I think he's doing a better job in that he's communicating the message to more people. But I think when people, I'm able to talk about it in a way that more people really understand it. I put it in terms that people follow it, and I think, like, if you look at some of my book, like How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes, and I'm getting a lot of people. So if Ron Paul can let them know about Austrian economics, if they can end up coming to one of my my YouTube channel or reading some of my books, that'll really solidify them. Although I think Ron Paul does a better job outside of a debate format. I mean, if you can talk to him for a while. He can talk Austrian economics. He knows it. But, a lot of times he doesn't, in these sound bites and debates, you have a hard time really, discussing it.
Right. And that was going to my next question, because he has to express his viewpoints within a political format because he is a candidate. So, people are cynical about politicians. You, on the other hand, are espousing it or enunciating these what are classical economic truths to an ever-broadening audience. What is the receptivity, the people who are getting your message now? How's that changed over the past several years from when you started kind of sounding the clarion call?
Well, I think a lot more people. I mean, I know I just spoke, I gave a lecture in Scottsdale, Arizona about a month ago, and we had over 700 people show up, which, years ago I wouldn't have crowds anywhere that big. And that was on the day that the football that they played for the college national championship game. Yet I still had over 700 people come to hear a lecture on Austrian economics. So, more people are finding out about it. I think the bursting of the real estate bubble and all the problems in the economy have piqued people's interest. People are now more interested in it, especially since the Austrians are the ones that predicted it. So Austrians have credibility. Growing credibility. Unfortunately, they don't have it in the mainstream, but they have it with people who are smart enough to do their own homework, because you've got the internet out there. I mean, what everybody was saying and writing is up there. You can see.
Yeah.
And the people that understood that there were problems and the nature of the problems and what the consequences were going to be were all Austrian. Mm-hmm. Everybody else, was wrong. The Keynesians, and the Keynesians have all their stimulus, and it's the Austrians that are saying it's not going to work.
Right, and when the whole financial collapse started, which is really kind of in 2007, they just started throwing money at it. Unemployment is increasing, although the official statistics going down, but really none of their curative efforts have met with any success whatsoever, have they?
Well, no, it creates the illusion of success. I mean, can we put some people to work by borrowing money and spending it? Yes, but if they're not working productively, we've wasted those resources. And the problem is, okay, we borrowed a bunch of money, we created some temporary jobs. Now what? We have to pay the money back. I mean, what happens to the jobs then? What about the interest? And as interest rates go up, so I would say that it is not success to borrow trillions of dollars, yet still have the unemployment rate, over 8%. And of course, that's, the official measure. The unofficial measure is just more like twice that. So we have a lot of unemployment. We're hemorrhaging red ink as a nation, yet we're claiming it's a success. It's not. It's an abject failure, and we will see how big a failure it is when the interest rates go up, and we have to start paying back that money.
Right. It's kind of like when they hire seasonal Santa Clauses. A seasonal Santa Claus doesn't increase wealth. All he does is he gets a paycheck, and hopefully he doesn't molest any of the little kids when they're sitting on his lap. And then eventually he's out of work. Christmas ends, and that's where we're heading now. Peter, hey, thanks so much for being on the Financial Survival Network. Tell us where we find you on the internet and your radio show.
Yeah, my radio show, shiftradio.com. I do that show live 2 hours a day from 10 a.m. to noon. You can listen on the internet live or delayed. We loop it all day long, so shiftradio.com. Also, my brokerage firm, Europac.net, EUROPAC.net, and my precious metals company, EuropacMetals.com, if you're interested in gold or silver. So I'm all over the internet. I got a new book coming out, too, in, I think it's May, called The Real Crash. So look for that one.
Hey, well, we're really excited to see that book, and it's great to have you here, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.